The playoffs are here. Is that a good return, finishing sort of in the top five? Is that a good outcome of the season for this team? Should they be reaching a bit higher than where they finished?
Well, I mean, I think for Jeonnam, it's the best finish since 21, the magical year that we also won the FA Cup. It's a massive improvement on 7th last year and 11th the year before that, so trending upwards. I don't think anybody was going to stop Anyang this year, and I know it's counterintuitive to football culture and blah, 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 but like I've always kind of had a soft spot for Anyang. I think they do things really well as a club, especially when they brought in those temp stands. The stadium's great, the atmosphere is great, and that's a fan base that deserves K-League 1. So I'm happy for Anyang, and I don't think Jeonnam was going to catch them. And when you look at it, only 3 points off of Asan in second in that guaranteed playoff spot. So like I think on the whole, it was a pretty strong season for Jeonnam. And again, the trend has been upward, 11th, 7th, and now into the playoffs. Second highest scoring team in K-League 2. So I'm last year I think was a bit of a surprise with an MVP on the team, and that felt like the first step, and this feels like the next step.
Yeah. Well, it's been quite a few years now down in K-League 2 because it's so hard to get out of this division. It came down in relegated 2018.
But it's skewed.
So
Haven't you heard Huang Sunhong has been saying it's unfair to K-League 1 teams? Yeah, because it's so easy to get promoted from K-League 2. I can't. Anyway, sorry.
He should know because he basically got sacked from Denton the first time when the team were in 4th. So, it is a hard league to get out of. Jeonnam, a bit of a shock when they got relegated in 2018, given the sort of size and the fact that they're owned by a very big company, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been 2019, 2020, 2021, that season, of course, you mentioned where they reached the playoffs, 2022, 2023, and then this season. So it's been quite a long time now, almost as long as how long I think Daejeon were down there for 7 or 8 years. And you have to worry. I mean, certainly I did as a fan of Daejeon. Is there a worry that the club could get left behind?
I think the concern there is we're one of 2 POSCO teams, as you alluded to, right? So Pohang are the POSCO team, right? You know, Pohang, POSCO, the 2 go together. Gwangyang, the Steel Yard. We've always kind of been the other POSCO team. I think having a strong showing in the FA Cup or the Korean Cup, it's the Korean Cup now, right?
I think so.
Yep. Okay. So having a strong showing in what I'm still going to refer to as the FA Cup, I think that has really, really helped Jeonnam in that win. Yeah, it was awesome to be a second division team and win the FA Cup. Like, it's one of the highs as in my fandom, in my sports fandom in general. But I think that was also kind of a like, hey, you can't forget about us. Like, we also are doing things. And this trending upwards in K-League 2, I think, is also very positive for the team, because if they were still kind of drifting, if they weren't really making any strides in K-League 2, then you could see how POSCO might kind of be like, thanks, but we've got other things. But I think they've done a good job of making a bit of noise and not being forgotten. And again, the past couple of years, the trend has been good. So honestly, it feels like at this point that it's a matter of when, not if, we get back to K1.
Yeah. We mentioned the FA Cup win. I think did that, do you think, give you and other fans a glimmer of hope then that the return to K-League 1 was like you said, a matter of when, not if?
I mean, for me, it gave me a new life. Jeonnam playing in Bangkok was when I became a digital nomad, when I decided that, where they go, I follow. And if that's to Thailand, then I go to Thailand. And then I just kind of stayed in Southeast Asia after that. So Jeonnam was my excuse to start K-League United. It was my excuse to move abroad. So the FA Cup win was massive. And again, I think that it still has ramifications to this day, because the FA Cup, Jeonnam have a good history in the FA Cup. Won it before, won it again recently. And I think it keeps them relevant. That was also, on a personal note, it was nice to see Lee Jung-ho lift a trophy for Jeonnam, because his career had such a great trajectory and then took a downturn because of injuries. So that was nice. But I think more than anything else, and more to your point, to stop rambling, I think it was proof that we could set our sights high, because in the FA Cup, going up against Ulsan, against Jeonbuk, against Pohang, against anybody, you can put anybody up against Jeonnam in the cup, and we're not going to be scared because we've beat you and we'll do it again. So I think that the cup mindset, I think, has really, really helped to prevent, again, that like listlessness and kind of drifting in K2 and not having anything. So I think that was a massive, massive moment for the club.
Yeah. So what would it mean then, do you think, for the club to win promotion this year, having made those sort of positive strides and made a bit of progress and get back to where probably many, if not everybody, really thinks that the club should be?
I mean, I think it would be relief in a lot of ways. It's very interesting now because, yeah, I think Korea Football News put this out recently, that if Jeonbuk gets relegated, there'll be more titles, more K-League 1 titles in K2 than in K1, because Songnam are down there, Suwon Blue Wings are going to remain down there. You're welcome. And Jeonbuk could join down there as well, which is like almost all of the K-League 1 titles, like it's a lot of titles down there. So I think, to me, that shows that the parity is improving in K-League. So I think for Jeonnam now being in K2 with teams with that much history, it's not as much of a slight as it used to be, but I think it would really help us step out of Pohang's shadow, right? Because again, we're always the other Postco team. So if we could get up there, get back into K1, look, I mean, a mid-table finish, if we get promoted and finish mid-table next year, outstanding. And then building after that could continue. So yeah, again, I think it would be relief, but I also think it would be a proof of concept, because again, the team had to start over. So there are always going to be some lean years after that. And the FA Cup win was a surprise, but the squad was a good squad that year. And now it's kind of in the middle of like that rebuilding process, kind of maybe towards the end of this phase. So I think it would be a good proof of concept as well.
Yeah. Well, you have a home game. So you have the home advantage rule to your advantage this time, as it wasn't the case. Obviously, you had to go to Daejeon in 2021, drew 0-0, and because of the unique way that the sort of playoffs are set up, it's kind of like the wild card game in the KBO, isn't it? Where you sort of, it's no team that finishes in that last playoff spot should win the playoffs, but Jeonnam, they're at home now in this one. Now it's time to make the most of that home advantage and really get the job done.
Yeah. So about that, we've only scored 28 of our 61 goals at home this year, so a little bit less than half. That's not too bad. But what's a little bit more concerning is that only 6 of our 16 wins have been at home. It's not an outstanding record, but to your point, a draw is a win in this one for us, right? 7 draws and more clean sheets at home than away. So that gives me a bit of hope here. So, I don't think going for a 0-0 approach like it's just not going to work. So home field advantage. Also, I know it comes up all the time, but the pitch at Gwangyang, what is going on? That used to be like, we used to be one of the teams that just always had a good pitch. And now I don't know if they got grubs or moles or both or what, but like, it's looking terrible these days. So home field in this one, because of that draw and you're through, that is a massive advantage. But the home form just hasn't been as good as you would expect from Jeonnam this year.
Yeah, and what makes this game interesting even more so is how good Busan I-Park's away form is. They've won 16 games this season, and 12 have come away from home, which is mad. Obviously, I'll ask Lapa in a little while about what he thinks of that sort of lopsided sort of pattern when it comes to Busan's form. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. But I would like to ask you if you could bring back one player from the Dragons' sort of best season since you started watching them and supporting them to come into this team and help them get over the line. Who would that be?
Yeah, I mean, there's really To me, there are multiple answers. I was gonna say there's only one answer, but 2015, I just absolutely fell in love with the team, and we were just so much fun to watch. We were so much fun that year. The mulleted man, Kim Byung-ji, between the sticks. We had Stebo up top. Lee Jung-ho was in his peak. But of all of those names, and I do apologize for the construction going on in the background, if anybody can hear that coming through. Welcome to Vietnam, ladies and gentlemen. There's always construction happening no matter where you go, unless you're in the mountains. I would say Mislav Orsic, because he was outstanding with Jeonnam. I mean, every time there was a free kick in the opponent's half, you thought that magic might happen. And just the way that he could create on his own, his finishing. And again, this was for Jeonnam. He was outstanding. And he since went on to represent Croatia at the national team level and scored against tiny little clubs. Listeners may not know AC Milan, Sevilla, and a small club called Chelsea. I don't know if people know these teams, but he's gone on to do pretty well in this small competition. There's like a European Champions League. I don't know if people know about that one.
Is there?
There is. And there's like a second division one. I think it's like the AFC Cup version. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know. But he's done really well over there. So like that it's still hard for me to believe that he played for Jeonnam. Like he was so good for us. And then he went on to do well with Ulsan, and then obviously just took off when he got back to Europe. So if I'm picking anybody to come back, I think he'd do a pretty good job. Or Kim Byung-ji, just for the vibes.
Yeah. Well, a trip to Mokdong awaits the winner of Thursday's match. And obviously you ended the season with a 4-0 win on the final day. That was a bit of a statement win. Could that be an advantage psychologically going into not just the game against iPark, but if you do get past iPark, then the game against Eland as well?
Yeah, I think scheduling-wise, things couldn't have really gone better. We always talk about the scheduling in K1 post-split and like what's the last game going to be and all those kind of things. It really worked out well in K2 because that was a statement in multiple ways. That was a statement because like we needed to win to ensure the playoffs, and boy, did we. And not only was it a victory, it was a victory against somebody that we hope to face again soon. So I think, mentally speaking, I don't think that match can be overrated, because that was hey, we are here, we're in the playoffs, we mean this, we're going to score goals, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Like I love that performance. I think that was absolutely massive. And then that's going to be in the mind of Eland. If we can get past Busan and face Eland, it's like, oh man, these guys put 4 past us a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So I think that's a massive, massive victory.
Let's just come to the end of it. Can the Dragons do it? Will they do it? Are you confident in seeing them back in K-League 1 next season?
That answer is yes. The problem is Busan, because it's a very tricky one against Busan. Busan's won the previous 2 meetings against Jeonnam, and they scored 5 goals doing it. And this is what I was saying earlier. I think with that record, and this construction is just amazing right now. With that record, aiming for a 0-0 or a 1-1, or just going into this match thinking a draw is good enough. We've seen that so many times in the playoffs, and I really, really hope that that's not the approach here, because we will not, it's not going to work. I don't like that approach. In the end, it might be a draw, and that might be what gets us through. But I think if we go in saying that a draw is good enough and that's all that we need, then we'll lose. If we go in to win it and then we get a draw, great. But I think it's got to be a slugfest. We're a team that scores goals, so let's go score some goals. Don't try to set up to always set up to get a clean sheet, right? Always, but I think in this one, parking 5 or 6 at the back, not having anybody go over the half line, and just doing that defensive nonsense that we see so many times, Busan will punish us for that. And we've seen it happen this year. So it's a tricky one, because home field advantage isn't as much of an advantage for Jeonnam, and Busan have done really well against us. However, if we get past Busan, I'm very confident going into that match against Seoul Eland. We've performed well against them. That 4-0 is massive. And then, man, what if it was Jeonbuk? What if it was Jeonbuk? How massive would that be? And then that's one as well where it's barely a rivalry. It's a derby, but it's barely a rivalry. And anytime we can get one over on Jeonbuk, it's absolutely massive. So if we could do that, if we could relegate Jeonbuk, well, we're not the little brother anymore. You go down to the second division and we sent you there. It'd be massive. And I think mentally for Jeonnam, if we can get past Busan, we can get past Eland, boy, have we got a good chance against Jeonbuk. And that's a very talented team. We know that. It's a very talented team, and they're going to be fighting for their lives. But we'll have momentum. And if it's a derby, great. If it's against Daegu instead, well, we've beat Daegu in big games before, haven't we? So to me, this is the trickiest one. This first one against Busan is the biggest hurdle. Because we don't have that mental edge against them. And Busan's just done really well against us. So this is the one, oddly enough, that has me even more worried than facing Daegu or Jeonbuk, because we're giant killers, man. Again, FA Cup, that's what we do. It's just what we do as a team. So picking on somebody our own size instead of bigger is a little bit more difficult for us. So this Busan one is what's got me worried.